Hello everyone, welcome to another edition of the Cleveland Sports Show. I am your host, Darius Sethna. Welcome back in for another fun-filled week of sports talk. Nordonia freshman Logan Purcell will be joining me in a few minutes. Here's our itinerary for today. So this week, we've got you updated with your sports fact of the day. We're going to get you into all of that. We're also going to talk about the Premier League, Columbus Crew, and FC Cincinnati soccer getting underway. We're also going to talk about the Cavs, the NBA regular season coming to an end. So we will get you caught up with the standings and what's at stake for some certain teams. Logan Purcell will join me to break all of that down with you. We'll also get you caught up. The WNBA preseason has finally tipped off. It began this week, so we'll get you updated with what's going on there. And then finally, we're going to close out the show with the Indians, who have been on a hot streak as of late. Ladies and gentlemen, this is definitely going to be an episode of the Cleveland Sports Show you are not going to want to miss out on. So stay tuned. Here's our theme, and we'll get you caught up with the latest sports news right here on the Cleveland Sports Show. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Darius Sethna of NordoniaHills.News, and the Cleveland Sports Show starts right now. Hello everyone, welcome to our latest edition of the Cleveland Sports Show. I am your host, Darius Sethna. Hope you are having a terrific week. I'll say the weather has been kind of on and off this week. Yesterday was Friday. What a terrific day. Now a little cloudy on this Saturday morning here in Macedonia for you. But nonetheless, the show goes on. Cleveland Sports Show goes on, and we're going to get you started with your sports fact of the day. Now, today is May 8th, 2021, and on this day, all the way back in 1970, Knicks fans, this is going to be a fact you're going to love. On this day, Friday of May 8th, 1970, the New York Knicks won their first ever NBA championship with a 113-99 win over the Los Angeles Lakers. The Knicks would then win the title again in 1973. That was their last most recent NBA title. So, Knicks fans, as you already know, it's been a very long time since the team has won, but definitely some high hopes for the Knicks this season. Now, on that 1979-70 championship roster that brought the city of New York its first championship included players Dick Barnett, Walt Frazier, Bill Bradley, Nate Bowman. The list goes on. Don May, Willis Reed, Cazzie Russell. I mean, this was definitely a great basketball team, defeating one of the most prominent teams, of the 20th century in basketball, the Los Angeles Lakers. So there's your sports fact of the day. May 8th, 1970, the Knicks defeat the Lakers in the NBA Finals to capture the Big Apple's first ever NBA championship. Now, let's move on from some basketball for a little bit here. We'll get back to basketball. We've got a lot to talk about with the Cavs, but let's talk about some Premier League soccer for a little bit. Now, we did have a couple of matches that have already concluded today. Leeds United defeated Tottenham 3-1, and Crystal Palace defeated Sheffield United 2-0. Also, we had a game yesterday. Newcastle defeated Leicester City by a final score of 4-2. We have two more games today in the Premier League. Manchester City will be taking on Chelsea today at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time, and then Liverpool will be going up against Southampton today at 3:15 p.m. Tomorrow, Mother's Day, we have 4 games for you. We have the Wolves going up against Brighton tomorrow at 7 a.m., Tomorrow at 9:05 a.m., Aston Villa will be taking up Manchester United. West Ham going up against Everton tomorrow as well at 11:30 a.m. And then finally for the afternoon matinee, it'll be Arsenal going up against West Brom to conclude your Sunday afternoon of soccer. But because tomorrow's Mother's Day, you might not want to wake your mom up at 7 a.m. to watch Premier League soccer. That might not be the best Mother's Day gift. Just saying. So if you want to watch some Premier League soccer, that might be better tomorrow just to do it by yourself because it's Mother's Day and you want to celebrate by letting your mom sleep in a little bit, I would think. Now, let's go to the standings in the Premier League. Manchester City, comfortable 13-point margin ahead of the second-place Manchester United. Manchester City, 25 wins, 5 draws, only 4 losses. However, Manchester City have the same amount of losses as them, but not as many wins. For Manchester United, 19 wins, 10 draws, 4 losses for a combined total of 67 points. Leicester City, with 35 matches played on the season thus far, 19 wins, 6 draws, 10 losses for 63 total points. Chelsea come in at 4th place in the Premier League right now with 34 matches played. 17 of those 34 matches wins, while the remaining 17, 10 draws and 7 losses. They have a total of 61 points on the season. West Ham round out the top 5 in the Premier League this week. They have 34 matches played as well, 17 wins, 7 draws, 10 losses on the season, 58 points total for West Ham. Now, overall stats in the Premier League right now, Harry Kane with 21 goals on the season thus far still leads the league in scoring. The Tottenham Hotspur striker Mohamed Salah of Liverpool comes in at a very close second, 20 goals for Salah on the season thus far. Son Heung-min and Bruno Fernandes come in at 3rd and 4th place respectively. Son Heung-min of Tottenham with 17 goals, and then Bruno Fernandes of Manchester United, 16 goals on the season thus far. Harry Kane and Bruno Fernandes lead your assists chart in the Premier League thus far. 13 assists on the season for Kane. Looks like he could easily get to 20 if he would like. Bruno Fernandes and Kevin De Bruyne of Manchester City are tied for 2nd place, each of those two players with 11 assists. And then Jack Grealish and Son Heung-min tie for 3rd place, each of those players with 10 assists on the season thus far. So as I mentioned, upcoming schedule in the Premier League today, you have Manchester City going up against Chelsea, 2 of the top 5 seeds. That's going to be a very entertaining matchup. You're also going to want to check out Liverpool taking on Southampton today at 3:15 p.m. And then, as I mentioned, a Mother's Day slate of games on Mother's Day starting tomorrow at 7 a.m. You have the Wolves taking on Brighton, Aston Villa going up against Manchester United, West Ham will be taking on Everton, and then Arsenal going up against West Brom. That game will be at 2 p.m. Tomorrow afternoon. Now, let's keep the topic on soccer. We're going to talk about the Columbus Crew for a little bit. Now, Columbus Crew had a couple of games in between our last 2 episodes. They tied Montreal 0-0 last Saturday, May 5th, the first official road game of the season for the Columbus Crew. Ended up in a tie, 0-0. And in that, remember that CONCACAF Champions League I was talking to you about, Monterrey actually defeated Columbus 3-0, a handy victory for Monterrey. So they win the aggregate score 5-2, because remember, in the first matchup, the two teams tied 2-2. And now with Monterrey, with this 3-0 win, they gain an additional 3 goals. So the aggregate score now 5-2. So Monterrey win this series, but this was just a good tournament just to get the Crew players get their feet wet and get ready for this regular season grind. This regular season grind for the Crew continues today at 1:30 p.m. from downtown Columbus, as the Crew will host DC United at 1:30 p.m. Wednesday, May 12th, Toronto FC will be hosting the Columbus Crew. The Crew will then head to New England for a matchup with the Revolution on Sunday, May 16th at 6 p.m. And then next Saturday, 2 Saturdays from now, Saturday, May 22nd, is when New York City FC will host the Columbus Crew. So 3 straight road games for the Crew. Going to be very interesting to see how that defending MLS Cup champions handle that stretch. Now, for the other Ohio MLS soccer team, FC Cincinnati, they lost their most recent game that last Saturday as well. They played and lost to Orlando City by a final score of 3-0. The next game for FC Cincinnati, however, is not till next weekend when the team hosts Inter Miami. That game will be on Sunday, May 16th at 4 p.m. The FC Cincinnati will then Montreal will then host FC Cincinnati May 22nd at 1 p.m. So overall standings right now in the Premier League, Columbus Crew 2 matches played, 2 points so far due to 2 draws. So they are in 10th place out of 14 in the Eastern Conference standings in the MLS right now. But as I mentioned, no need to worry. Only a couple games in. Crew, if they can start winning some games, especially on the road now, they will be in good shape. FC Cincinnati, with their loss, with 1 loss and two losses, and a draw, they are in the bottom, last place in the Eastern Conference standings of the MLS. Only 1 point for FC Cincinnati thus far. And now it's time to move to basketball, ladies and gentlemen, bringing in Nordonia freshman Logan Purcell. Logan, it's been one of the longest weeks ever with this Cavs season. This was one of the worst weeks to be a Cavs fan. But let's start it off, Logan. How have you been doing this past week?
As you said, it's been a rough week for all Cleveland sports, really. I mean, aside from the Indians, who just finished up a great series, which I'm sure we'll get into later. But,
yes.
It's been a good week. It's been a good week. You?
I've had a pretty good week as well. As I mentioned, long week with that Cavs schedule and their results. So let's get into that, Logan. Have some NBA talk here. Cleveland Cavaliers, it's with their loss last Friday against the Washington Wizards, they have officially been eliminated from any kind of playoff contention. They won't even be able to compete for a play-in tournament. And honestly, Logan, the way they've been playing, I don't even think that they would even have a chance in the play-in tournament, because they have been just getting blown out in all these games. The Cavs have had 4 games since the last time we talked, Logan. All 4 losses. The most competitive game, Logan, they forced overtime against the Phoenix Suns. Now, I was at this game, very competitive game, and the Cavs just had one of the worst overtime performances I've ever seen from any NBA team, at all. I mean, when you think of an overtime performance, this had to be on the top of my list for one of the worst ever. They were outscored in overtime by the Phoenix Suns by 16 points. The overtime score, Logan, 20-4. So this looked like it was a blowout loss in overtime. Instead, what a shame, because the Cavs did such a great job. Isaac Okoro was terrific, forcing that overtime, and then the Cavs just completely collapsed in the overtime period. It didn't get any better this past Wednesday, Logan. Damian Lillard and the Portland Trail Blazers were in town and just lit the Cavs up. Damian Lillard only had to play 31 minutes, still lit up the Cavs for 32 points and 9 assists. On the Cavs side, Kevin Love, 18 points, Cedi Osman, 14. Cedi Osman's been one of probably the better players for the Cavs this past week. But, Colin Sexton, only 15 points in 34 minutes. It's been a rough week for him. Let's talk about these last couple of games here against the Suns and the Trailblazers, Logan. We'll get into the Mavericks in a couple minutes here. But, and even the Heat, too. I mean, this last Saturday, Cavs lost to Miami 124-107. This has been a very rough week for the Cavs. So what do you think's going on, Logan? I know Garland's been hurt. He got hurt last week. But, I mean, at this point, there's nothing to play for. But you can't be getting blown out like this to end the season.
I completely agree with you. And, from looking at the numbers and the box scores from each quarter by quarter, it really doesn't seem like the Cavs, it's not like they're losing by 4 every single quarter. They're in it until this one quarter, it seems like. Whether it's the third quarter to me was against Portland, they struggled. I believe they got outscored by 12 points, which, doesn't sound like a whole lot, but, it doesn't sound like a whole lot when you consider the game.
Right.
Getting outscored by 12 points in one quarter is quite a lot, especially when you're only scoring 20. So that was definitely the turning point in that game where they struggled. And then the Suns, you already mentioned, is overtime quarter.
Yeah.
It is overtime, still a quarter. 20-4 is absolutely ridiculous. It's unacceptable. Regardless of who you have on your team and regardless of the ability of the players on your team, that is just unbelievable. And it just seems like they fall apart in one quarter, later in the second half at some point. And I've talked about it before, but I think that's got to go partially on J.B. Bickerstaff and his inability to make substitutions and make adjustments come second half.
How do you feel about Bickerstaff's coaching overall this season? Because it seems like this has kind of been the case the entire season, Logan. The Cavs just have one bad quarter in their losses, and that's basically what puts them over the top to lose the game. So do you think that the Cavs signing Bickerstaff long-term was the right move? Because I liked Bickerstaff, especially when he came on board. It seems like the team was heading in the right direction. Then COVID happened, and they started off this year 3-0. So how do you feel about Bickerstaff's coaching position?
I think that for the first season he struggled for his first season at head coach is what I meant, but he struggled a little bit. It seems like he hasn't found that consistency that we talk about so heavily with really good teams in the NBA nowadays. Not that the Cavs are anywhere near that level, because they're not.
Yeah.
But I just think he's got to be able to find like the button on some of these guys. He's just got to like find that thing that makes them tick.
Yeah.
And push it, because it just seems like none of them. Okoro, Sexton's been about as close as it gets, but even then, I'm sure everybody who looks at Cleveland sports has noticed, the whole. There were rumors of the Cavs teammates talking about how they're not a huge fan of Colin Sexton right now, and him, just dribbling the ball.
Yeah, and that's not the first time that's happened too. Remember, Logan, I remember when Sexton was a rookie, and some of the older veterans were a little disappointed with how he was playing. So this isn't the first time that people are complaining about Sexton holding the ball.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I just find a problem with. I mean, I understand he's your star player right at this point, but at the same time, it's the coach. The star players love to be coached.
Yeah.
You've heard LeBron and Kobe and guys like that always be like, I loved being coached.
Yeah.
And Bickerstaff, to me, just obviously based on the results of each game, just isn't doing that. To me, it's got to be one of those things where you got to grab his collar and be like, dude, you got to stop. It's enough.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to pull you, kind of thing.
Right.
But he just doesn't do that. You still see Sexton putting up 35 minutes a game. And like I said, I understand he plays well, but is it for the betterment of the team? I mean, this team obviously has not been playing up to near expectation. I mean, we still talk about this team has the intangibles to a degree. They've got Allen, they've got Sexton, they've got Garland.
Yeah.
Love has been playing very well. They just can't put it together.
And you just mentioned Kevin Love, Logan. I'm still, he was out last night against the Mavericks. Let's talk about this game for a little bit. This was probably one of the worst performances the Cavs had the entire season. They lost by 20, 110-90, but they were down by nearly 30 at one point. They got outscored 33-19 in the first quarter. Cedi Osman and Colin Sexton, the two leading scorers for the Cavs. No one else scored even more than 20. It was just Sexton with 27, Cedi Osman with 22. Now, Cedi Osman had 22 points, but it was probably one of the worst games I've ever seen him play. He was just committing turnover after turnover. In fact, the Cavs 14 turnovers last night against Dallas, and they were, they did have 11 offensive rebounds. They shot pretty decently from the three-point line. But here's another thing, Logan. 6 of 29 from 3, Logan, for the Cavs last night. It's only 20%. That's extremely concerning for me, especially in a league where a lot of teams are now turning to that three-point shot. Your thoughts on the three-point disparities last night for the Cavs?
I mean, yeah, when we talk about the Cavs as a team, the three-point, the inability to hit threes when it comes down to it has been a huge, consistent problem for that team. And it's funny because we talk about the inconsistencies. It seems like the poor things that happen in this team are the only consistencies. The other thing that I'd like to touch on as well, alongside the three-pointers, is just total field goal percentage.
Yes,
it's like 83 shots and shot 38% compared to the Mavericks just being 0.6% off of 50. So not only is that absolutely ridiculously bad defense, but, I mean, you just can't finish. There's just no true scorer on this team. We talked about Sexton being that guy, but nobody takes control. Sexton wants to walk around and dribble the whole game. I mean, don't get me wrong, he still shot 50%, shot 9 of 18, 27 points on the night, but he had 4 assists. And whenever your primary ball handler has 4 assists, we've got a problem.
Yeah.
In my eyes.
Yeah.
So to me, it's just a matter of they've got to start changing these poor consistencies to good consistencies. And
you were talking about how it seems like this is out of control. There's no level of stability or control when the Cavs are on the floor. When I think about that, Logan, and I'm kind of thinking about Kevin Love here. He's the highest paid player on the team. He's the leader, and it makes me keep thinking about what the Cavs' next steps have to be with Love. Because I'm going to be quite honest with you, I don't think he's a good fit for this rebuild. He's too injury prone. He just doesn't have that athleticism anymore. Yes, he still can play in the NBA. He's not a scrub by any means, but I just don't think he's the right fit for Cleveland anymore. So, we were talking about this earlier in the year, Logan, and I'm interested to see if you've changed your mind. What do you think the Cavs should do with Kevin Love, and do you have any ideas of any possible trade scenarios that they could make with another team to maybe bring in some youth or even another veteran who can get these guys in shape? Because I was talking about a guy like Marcus Morris would be a great fit for this Cavs team because he is someone who I think is a very tough player and has, the offensive skill to back it up. I think he'd be a great fit for the Cavs. So, but what ideas do you have in terms of what the Cavs can do with Kevin Love, Logan?
Well, unfortunately, in my eyes, there's not a whole lot of options here. There's not a whole lot of flexibility because, as you mentioned, he is the highest paid player on the team.
Yeah.
And I know, there's not that many guys that are paid a whole lot on the team. You look across the board, the Cavs have a lot of money.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean much because Kevin Love's making, I believe, $31 million a year.
Oh, and they're eventually going to have to pay Sexton, too. That rookie deal's going to end soon,
That's what I'm saying. And to me, unfortunately, I feel like you just have to wait until the offseason to make a move, like right before the draft, and look to trade for a pick because as of right now, going into the playoffs, I don't know if a team is going to be willing to take that contract on. I mean, you look at a team, some of the bigger markets. I don't think a team like Memphis, some of the smaller markets like that, Memphis, Dallas, teams like that I don't think they're going to want to make that move.
Yeah.
Because they don't have enough money. They don't have a lot of money and free agents coming in as it is. I think those are more teams that are going to want to build around youth. We talked about the Mavs. You want to talk about Luka. You want to talk about Kristaps. You talk about the Memphis Grizzlies. You want to talk about Jaren Jackson. You want to talk about John Morant.
Yeah.
Whereas big markets, they've got guys free agents or guys they make big trades for big players. The Lakers have Anthony Davis and LeBron.
Right.
The Clippers, both free agents. Kawhi, PG. They don't really have the kind of money to spend on a guy like Kevin Love, a guy who's going to go out and get you maybe 10 points a game,
Mm-hmm.
So to me, unfortunately, this was just a stupid move at all by the Cavs. And personally, I remember even when they first made the deal with him, I thought, wow, what a shot. Why would they do that? That's a lot of money. Even for a guy, if you think about it, at the time, I believe the most points he's averaged in a season was like 19.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even then, that's not $31 million a year.
Right.
So I think that at this point, there's not a whole lot they can do besides ride it out until the offseason.
Yeah, and, not much longer for the Cavs till the offseason, Logan. As I mentioned, they've been eliminated from any kind of playoff contention, but they still have 5 games left on this regular season. The Cavs schedule will continue tomorrow on Mother's Day at 7 p.m., where the Dallas Mavericks will be here in Cleveland at Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse. So Cavs will be looking to get some revenge after what happened to them last night in Dallas. The Cavs will then continue a 3-game homestand with Game 2 of 3 Monday, May 10th. That'll be against the Indiana Pacers at 7:30 p.m. The Cavs will then have their last home game of the regular season at Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse in downtown Cleveland on Wednesday the 12th against Jason Tatum and the Boston Celtics. The Cavs will then have 2 more road games to finish their season in Washington, D.C. This upcoming Friday, and then next Sunday, May 16th, against the Nets. The time for that game against Brooklyn is still to be determined. So that is the upcoming Cavs schedule. Overall standings, the Cavs are in 14th place, second to last place in the Eastern Conference. They have the longest losing streak of any team in the Eastern Conference. They've lost their last 9 games. They're 1-9 in their last 10 games. They are a game better than the Detroit Pistons, who have a record of 20-47. Cavs with a record of 21 wins, 46 losses. So that concludes Cavs talk, Logan, but I want to keep it NBA related for a little bit longer because the playoffs are rolling around. That play-in tournament is coming, and I want to start with the Western Conference, Logan. Here's a team I was not expecting to be in the play-in tournament whatsoever, the Los Angeles Lakers. Logan, the Lakers were my pick to win the Western Conference, and a lot of people are officially in panic mode, and I am also in panic mode with the Lakers. They're 37-30 on the season, but they're 2-8 in their last 10 games. As I mentioned, LeBron came back a little bit last week, but he's resting again just to make sure that ankle that he injured over a month ago is healing the best it can before the playoffs. But now the Lakers are find themselves in a play-in spot, Logan, 7th through 10th seed. They're the 7th seed after a loss to the Portland Trail Blazers last night. So, Logan, I'll start with you here. How concerned are you with the Lakers, and do you think that they're going to be able to turn it around once the playoffs roll around?
Well, I'm not that concerned. I'm a little bit on edge, we'll call it.
Really?
But I'm not super concerned, because at the end of the day, I look at it like this. You still have two of the best players in the world. I will take LeBron James 95% healthy over anybody in the NBA 100%. Anybody. And you can quote me on that because it's just LeBron James.
Right.
He can do it all.
Right.
He doesn't necessarily need his athleticism. I mean, it helps.
Yeah.
But it's not his game. His game isn't, go dunk over everybody. That was him back in 2013. That's not LeBron anymore.
Yes. Yeah.
I just feel like he has expanded his skill set to a much more advanced level than it used to be at. And I'm not that concerned about LeBron James. When it comes to Anthony Davis, I'm a bit worried. He's really young. And I think he's got a really bright future, but if he becomes one of those guys that is hurt every year, we talk about Kyrie Irving.
Yeah.
I mean, he missed a lot of games earlier this year, and I know he's got personal stuff and all that, but I mean, come on, when you're paid $40 million a year, you got to be playing basketball.
Right.
Not sitting on the bench
in
a suit. So, to me, Anthony Davis concerns me a little bit, but in my eyes, believe it or not, I think LeBron James can single-handedly take out half the teams in the playoffs right now.
Really?
I'll take LeBron James and his Lakers group over Portland. I'll take him over Dallas. I'd take him over, a Donovan Mitchell-less Donovan Mitchell-less Utah team. I just think that LeBron James is just that impactful.
Yeah, I'm not questioning the greatness of LeBron James whatsoever. I think, you can never bet against LeBron James. It's, just like you can't bet against Tom Brady. But, Jazz aren't, they're not chopped liver to me, Logan. They're 49-18. They've been shooting the lights out. They're 7-3 in their last 10. When you think of a quintessential team that's put together, I think about the Utah Jazz and the Phoenix Suns. So, I'm a little worried about if the Lakers don't have Anthony Davis and LeBron and company have to go up against them, especially against teams like the Clippers and the Nuggets too, Logan. You can't just ignore those teams either. Look at the Clippers. They're 45-22. They've won their last 2 games. I am very nervous. And now the Lakers are in the play-in tournament too, so they're going to have to go up against Steph and the Warriors in that play-in tournament. How do you think that would fare out? Because Steph Curry's arguably playing the best basketball we've ever seen him play. And, if this play-in tournament started today, the Lakers would be going up against the Warriors. So how do you think how do you think that game would play out?
So wait, in the play-in tournament, is it 7 and 8?
So
Play each other, or is it 7?
So it's 7 through 10. So I'll give you the specifications here, and all you audience members as well. So 7 through 10, each conference, those seeds will play in a play-in tournament. The 7th and 8th seeds will play a game. The 9th and 10th seeds will play. So the way it works is the loser of the 9-10 game will be eliminated automatically. And then the winner of the 7-8 game will get that 7th seed. So then the loser of the 7-8 game will play the winner of the 9-10 game, and that game will specify who's the 8th seed, and then we go to the playoffs. So that's basically the basic rundown of the play-in tournament.
Okay, thank you. I was a bit confused on that. So
yeah, I was as well.
Wrong. This Golden State team they're playing a lot better. They're 6-4 in their last 10, and they've been picking it up. And with Steph Curry playing bionic as he typically does, you can't ever count that team out. But,
right.
At the same time, I could also stress some concern for the Utah Jazz and the Phoenix Suns. Because they worked their butts off all year. As you mentioned, 49-18, 48-19 for Phoenix. Just to play LeBron James and Anthony Davis in the first round. So, to me, I stress a little bit on that. And like you said, they're not chopped liver teams. But at the same time, history has proven time and time again that the team with the best players wins. And I stick by that. To me, I would much rather take a team with LeBron James and Anthony Davis, and a guy like Kyle Kuzma off the bench, than a team with 8 deep. So Anthony Davis. I don't think LeBron James is really anything to worry about.
Yeah.
As I've mentioned before, but Anthony Davis is something to bat an eye about. But I'm very interested to see. I just feel like the Utah Jazz and the Phoenix Suns will have something coming for them if they have to play LeBron James and Anthony Davis come playoff time.
Yeah, and when you talk about wild Western Conference, Logan, it doesn't get any more wild than this. Very, very interesting statistic here. But let's talk about the Eastern Conference as well, Logan. And let's talk about, the Brooklyn Nets have been the talk of the East all season long, so we're going to talk about them for a bit here. The Nets have lost 4 in a row, Logan. They're 5-5 in their last 10 games, and they've been struggling without James Harden. The losing streak started last Friday when they lost to the Blazers by 19 points. They then had a back-to-back pair of games against the Bucks in Milwaukee and lost both of them. They were only by single digits, but still losses. And then this past Thursday, they lost to the Mavericks 113-109, only by 4 points. And they play the Nuggets today in Denver, so they don't have there's another tough game coming up for them tonight. So, I was thinking about this, Logan, and when I'm thinking about the Nets' big three, I'm thinking about who's the most important piece in that squad. And I always thought, and I honestly still believe that it's Kevin Durant, because Kevin Durant is the best player on the team. He's the leader. He's the guy who got all of this started. He's arguably the best defensive player on the team as well. So I think when you have him in the playoffs and his elite skill, you can go as deep as you can. But with these statistics, it seems to me that James Harden might also be candidate for the most important player on the Nets, because the Nets without Harden are pretty much a sub-500 team. So in your estimation, Logan, who out of the Nets' big three is the most important piece on the squad?
So, there's no way that you can ever look away or doubt the greatness of Kevin Durant. As you mentioned, he's an absolute sniper. Slim Reaper is what they call him. He's an absolute elite scorer offensively, and he's there defensively at all times. But to me, it's got to be James Harden. Because if you look at the numbers, and I love looking at numbers, I think numbers are the keen observation for how to judge a player or a team even, not just watching the games, obviously, but this team, Kevin Durant, when he plays, the team has a better chance to win games if James Harden is on the court. And I feel that James Harden is easily the most important player offensively on this team. He won't ever make the same defensive impact as Kevin Durant does.
Yeah.
But to me, it comes from an offensive standpoint, this team is better off with James Harden. Now, if I had it my way, I think, Kyrie Irving is an absolutely dazzling talent. He's probably the most fun player in the NBA to watch, but I would rather take Harden and Durant over Kyrie and either one of those guys. I think, not that Kevin Durant doesn't, but I think more than anybody on that team, I think James Harden makes the guys around him better.
And if it's also Logan, if it's Kyrie and Harden and no Durant, the Nets aren't even getting to the conference finals, in my opinion.
You don't think so?
No way. You can't. Think about the size of the Bucks and the Sixers. There's no way the Nets can get to the conference finals without KD, with those two teams. In my eyes.
Well, in my eyes personally, I think that this team has a better chance of making it to the conference finals with James Harden and Kyrie Irving than with Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. And the reason I say that is not to dog on Kevin Durant. Like I said it before, I said Kevin Durant is an absolutely elite talent. But I believe that he doesn't make the guys around him better the way James Harden can. If you remember watching James Harden his ability to pass the basketball is another level this year. James Harden has shown a new side of him. He has just been absolutely fantastic until his hamstring problem.
Yeah.
I think that Joe Harris, when James Harden was playing, was averaging, I believe, like 15, 16 points a game.
Yeah, he's the best shooter on the team.
He's playing well.
Yeah.
He's playing well, but I don't think he's playing that well. And I just feel like this team is so much better off with James Harden on the floor than off.
So even with all these injury concerns, Logan, are the Nets still your favorite to win the East? Because right now they're third in the Eastern Conference, that third seed at 43-24, tied for Milwaukee for that second spot. The Bucks in that second spot officially. Philadelphia 76ers, though, 3 games ahead of Milwaukee for that first place seed. So if the playoffs were to start today, Philly would have that 1 seed. So do you still think, even with the struggles the Nets have been having lately and all the injury concerns, that they will still win the Eastern Conference, Logan?
I do. I do still have my, eyes set on the Nets making it to the NBA Finals. And my reasoning behind that is, we already talked about the amount of talent that is built on this team. And I mentioned it when we talked about the Lakers. But the team with the best players always wins. It's that simple.
Right.
And I know that that's very debatable. But to me, I don't know how you can even imagine any team with a mixture of Kevin Durant or James Harden or Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant, or whatever the mixture and duo or trio ends up being, not making it to the NBA Finals regardless of the competition. And I know that sounds a bit out there, but at the same time, we've seen inconsistencies from the Sixers. We've seen it from the Bucks. And to me, I just think the Nets are showing, for the first time this season, what looks like to me,
right,
a little bit of problems. I think that they've been absolutely fantastic the entire rest of the season, though.
Yeah, and, I'm very interested to see how the Nets will compete in this Eastern Conference. If they are locked and loaded with everyone healthy, there is no one, and I repeat, no one who is going to stop them, But, right now, those injuries are the main problem, just like the Lakers. So we're going to see, some of these elite teams of the NBA kind of slipping a little bit now. We'll see how this all pans out. But, Logan, last NBA topic I want to discuss with you. We do this every week. So I want to, for Eastern Conference, team that's disappointed you the most thus far for this week, and then the team that's impressed you the most this week in the East.
Well, for impressed, I have to go with probably the New York Knicks, honestly. It's not just because, and I know they've lost the last couple games by large margins, but those two teams are two teams that are going to end up competing for the Western Conference Finals come playoff time. I think not only for this week, but I kind of cheated a little bit, but I meant season total. Really, New York. I'm sorry, but 37-30 for a team that was supposed to be getting the number 1 pick in the draft. Honestly, this team has absolutely dominated the Eastern Conference this year. They took over Memphis on Monday. They had a great game there against John Morant. Julius Randle was a big help with 28 points as well as 5 3-pointers.
Yeah.
Those true power forwards that we still have in the NBA now. I think, like I said, I guess I cheated a little bit. They did lose by, I believe, almost 20 in both games. But those are two teams that we've talked about as, competing with, the likes of the Clippers and the Lakers and those big conference teams. So I don't look at it like too much of a problem because I think this Knicks team has absolutely outdone themselves this year.
Do you? I was going to ask you real quick, Logan. Do you think that Julius Randle is the most improved player of the year this year? Because he has my vote for that category.
Yeah. From a number standpoint, if you look at the numbers, he had an absolutely fantastic year last year, just as much as he is this year. But yeah. I think from most improved, you got to look at numbers of team as well. His team last year, I don't even think they weren't even close to the playoffs last year.
Oh, no.
Not even close.
No.
So this year, they're fourth seed in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah.
Now, mind you, they're still 9 games behind, the 1 seed, but they're the number 4 team in the Eastern Conference. The number 4 is number 4 regardless of the way you look at it.
Yeah, you get home court.
I think that, exactly. I think Julius Randle has done a fantastic job working with his team and making sure that they had a chance to come playoff time.
And also, Logan, you just brushed up on the Knicks. You could say the Nets may be the most disappointing this week. But any other thoughts on most disappointing teams this week in the East?
Oh, yeah, the Nets are definitely up there. But the other really disappointing team has been the Boston Celtics.
Yes.
They had a very good game against Orlando and beat them by almost 40. And that was a very good game, a good win, but they lost to Chicago. Don't get me wrong. I love the Nikola Vucevic move. I know Zach LaVine is real, but the Chicago Bulls beat this team by 22 points.
Yeah.
I think Jason Tatum has had an abysmal performance. 3 for 15, 9 points, 0 for 7 from 3
in 38 minutes.
But can I just go? Absolutely ridiculous. But can I just give a little shout out this week? Despite being on the most disappointing team, Kemba Walker, absolutely lethal this week. 33 last night against the Bulls in a loss, but 32 against Orlando. And I've talked about Kemba Walker being the most, inconsistent guy on the Celtics. He had an amazing week. And I was really impressed by his ability to shoot the ball this week, but Tatum really struggled last night, and that probably aided to them being one of the more disappointing teams this week in the Eastern Conference.
And also for the Celtics, Logan, just want to touch on this too. It seems, from what I've been seeing, it seems like also Evan Fournier has really stepped up. Last night in the loss to Chicago, 17 points, 6 rebounds, 3 assists, all in 36 minutes. So it seems like he's been stepping up these last few games.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's exactly what they needed him to do. And, what you didn't mention is the game against Portland when they only lost by 10. Fournier had 21.
Yeah.
And he shot 80% from the field. 8 of 10. He consistently, and he got it done. The one thing that I will say is a sort of an excuse, we'll call it, for the Celtics' struggles these past couple games has been the lack thereof of having Jaylen Brown on the court. He has not been playing these past few games. So I'm not going to give him a pass, per se. But I think that is a little bit of something to be like, okay, well, you know what? Come play-in time or playoff time, whatever they end up doing, Jaylen Brown, who is a superstar in this league, will be back.
Yes, and I'm so excited to see how the Celtics, will they play that consistency game, because they're going to be going up against a tough opponent in the first round. I don't think they're going to be getting home court in that first round, so we'll see how the standings work in their favor. Let's keep the basketball topic going here, Logan. We're going to switch over to the WNBA, though, where we had our first preseason game this past Wednesday, May 5th, where the Atlanta Dream defeating the Washington Mystics by a final score of 87-80. We have 4 more preseason games today as well. The the Connecticut Sun taking on the Wings today at 1 p.m. The Mystics going up against the Lynx today at 2. The Aces going up against the LA Sparks today at 4 p.m. And then the final game, preseason game of today, the Seattle Storm going up against the Phoenix Mercury today at 7 p.m. So the Dallas gets the first pick in this year's WNBA draft, Logan. There's a lot of hype going into this season. So who are your kind of favorites to take a stronghold in the WNBA this year?
I think the Las Vegas Aces are a huge team that you got to talk about. I mean, they had a lot of success last year, and I think that it's one of those teams that is going to have a very good opportunity to do something in the WNBA this year. And then the other, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Yeah, keep going. My bad.
And then I think the other team that you got to talk about is Seattle Storm.
Yes.
Like that from top to bottom, Sue Bird, a 19-year guard, absolutely fantastic, continues to do everything that she has to do, has been absolutely amazing these past few years. And then the relatively younger Brianna Stewart, who had a fantastic ending to her season last year. That team is just absolutely loaded from top to bottom. I look at that team kind of like the build of the Lakers. You've got your marquee superstar guard in Sue Bird, and then you've got your absolutely monster, unstoppable forward, Brianna Stewart on that team. And then they've got a lot of depth. Jordan Canada at guard. They've got a lot of good depth on that team.
Right.
And I don't see a lot of teams being able to stop them.
And how do you feel about the Washington Mystics as well? Elena Delle Donne's still on the roster. How far do you think they can go in the playoffs when the playoff time comes around?
I think that this is the team that is definitely going to need to work a little bit with the guards. I think Ariel Atkins had a fantastic year last year. She was a little bit inconsistent, but we saw a lot of glimpses of some greatness from her. I think fantastic year, averaging I believe 14 points a game, 15 points a game. She's got to continue to improve and continue to work. And she's young, only 3 years into the league. I think that's one of the players that is going to be a huge factor in the Mystics' ability to get into the playoffs this year. And,
as I mentioned, mentioned this a couple weeks ago, but the WNBA season will tip off Friday, May 14th. Be the first set of games. We'll have 4 games that day. Mercury will be playing the Lynx, Wings playing the Sparks, the Fever going up against the Liberty, Sun, and the Dream. Logan and I will keep you updated with all the WNBA updates, scores, standings, and the latest news in the WNBA regular season. Now let's take a break from basketball here, Logan, and we're going to go back to baseball. Let's talk about the Cleveland Indians. And, they lost their most recent game last night to the Cincinnati Reds at home. Not a great performance, and they gave up all their runs in the ninth inning, Logan. So this was a competitive game for the majority of the night, and then the Indians kind of blow it in the final inning, giving up 3 runs. But other than that, Logan, it's been a great week for the Indians, and what a terrific trip they had to finish out Chicago and then go to Kansas City, winning all the games against the Royals. Sunday, May 2nd, the Indians defeated the White Sox 5-0, and that began their streak of 5 games in a row, including 4 road wins against the Royals, all in Kansas City. So now in the AL Central Division, the Indians have taken that second spot. They're only a half game behind first place Chicago White Sox in that spot in first place in the AL Central. So how would you, despite that tough loss last night against Cincinnati, Logan, how would you analyze and evaluate the week that the Indians had, especially with those wins against Kansas City?
Well, I was very impressed and surprised with the wins against Kansas City. I know when we talked last about the baseball, the Cleveland Indians, I mentioned, you asked me what I felt like they needed to do to try to take control of that AL Central. And my first response was they needed to finish off the series against Chicago, and they needed to sweep Kansas City. And they did just that in pretty tremendous fashion. They got the bats going early in each of those games pretty much, and I was very impressed with their ability to slow down innings. The runs didn't clump. It wasn't, 4 or 5 runs each inning.
Right.
Like it had been previous losses against Chicago and, when they played Detroit earlier in the season. But I was very, very impressed with their series against Kansas City.
And also, Logan, what are your thoughts on last night's game? Because the Indians had played a very tight game, and then in the ninth inning they give up those 3 runs and then lose the game 3-0. So your thoughts on that performance last night? Very competitive, but they didn't close out the game.
I think that the fact that they weren't able to get the bats going, and they were left hitless by that Reds pitching group, and the fact that they were not able to close it out or at least send it to an extra box was a bit disappointing. But I still give them credit for staying in it from the pitching staff.
And definitely have to give credit for the Indians as to where they are in the standings right now. As I mentioned, Indians second place in the American League Central Division with a record of 17 wins and 14 losses. The Indians are 7-3 in their last 10 games. They're 7-7 at home, 10-7 on the road. The upcoming schedule for the Indians, they had that loss against Cincinnati last night, 3-0. Game 2 of this 3-game homestand against Cincinnati will be today at 6:10 p.m. from Progressive Field. And then Mother's Day tomorrow, the Cincinnati Reds will face the Indians once again in Cleveland tomorrow at 1:10 p.m. The Indians will continue their homestand with a pair of games against the Chicago Cubs on Tuesday and Wednesday of this week before they head out on the West Coast for games against the Seattle Mariners. They'll have 4 games against Seattle, and then they will be playing the Angels as well. So, Logan, some quality opponents coming up, especially, Cincinnati, the Cubs, who are kind of, inconsistent, I think, to say the least. And then, you're going to have a long road trip against teams like Seattle and, the Angels. And then the Indians come back home after that West Coast trip to play the Twins. So definitely some competitive games here for the Indians. What do you want to see from them, as they try to clinch that top seed in the AL Central Division?
Well, one of the things that I'm going to look for these in these next couple of weeks from the Indians, we've seen a couple of guys get hot during the game, but the next game, then they go hitless.
Yeah.
Or they go 1 for 4. I think I need to see somebody or a couple of guys go 3 for 4 in a couple straight games, or 2 for 4, go 500, and get some of those batting averages up, because they've really struggled getting the bats going consistently.
Right.
Like I said, it's been like game by game, but I think it needs to start being week by week. We need to start getting some hitting streaks going for these Indians. Yeah,
and Indians, as I mentioned, going to be a very competitive schedule, to say the least. But Logan, let's get into our impressed and disappointing segment here for the MLB. So the Red Sox, in the American League, they are continuing to win. They're 6-4 in their last 10 games. As I mentioned, Indians in second place in that American League Central Division. In the National League, Phillies at 18-15, they lead the NL East. They're 7-3 in their last 10 games. You've got teams like the Dodgers. They're only a game above 500. They're 2-8 in their last 10 games. They're still been very inconsistent. The Atlanta Braves too. They are continuing their struggles. They're only 15-17. Yankees are at 500 now at 16-16. So Logan, let's start with the American League. Which team are you most impressed by? Which team are you most disappointed with?
Well, I was a little bit this past week, or past couple weeks, I should say. I was pretty impressed with Tampa Bay. I talked about them being one of my more disappointing teams because I did look at them as possibly an ALCS contender come playoff time and postseason, but they were struggling really badly. But they finally picked it up. I know they're only 6-4 in their last 10, but they're finally back to second in the AL East, right behind Boston. But they, for me, this past couple weeks have been one of the more impressive teams in the AL.
And in the AL also, Logan, you were mentioning Tampa Bay, great. They're 18-16. They're 6-4 in their last 10, and they have a great road record, 11-6 on the road thus far. That's where you want to be. They're going to have to improve that home record, though. They're only 7-10 at home. But in terms of most disappointing teams thus far, Logan, who this week in the AL, who do you have on that list?
Houston is really they're third in the AL West. I know that battle between those three teams, Oakland, Seattle, and Houston, is really tight. But Oakland has struggled a little bit this season. At 17-15, they should not be third. This is a team that hasn't lost a whole lot. They still got some of their guys. They still got Jose Altuve. They still got Alex Bregman, Carlos Correa. This team is still a very good team. Michael Brantley as well.
Right.
That Greinke pitch. They've got a lot of guys, and they're only third in the AL West. Right now, I don't even believe they're playoffs right now. I don't believe, if I'm not mistaken. But this is a team that should not be third or fourth even. They should be up there with the A's at 20-14. Instead, they're 17-15 and on a little bit of a struggling streak. So I think that Houston is one of the teams in the AL that has been struggling for me. And
also, Logan, Houston only 8-7 at home, 9-8 on the road, so not completely in panic mode, and you're 2 games above 500. But, obviously, especially you were mentioning how tight it is between the Athletics, the Mariners, and the Astros. It's going to be very intriguing to see how that those AL West standings play out. Now, let's go to the National League, Logan, where, I was talking about the Braves. They've been kind of disappointing, only 15-17. The Cubs, they're at 500. As I mentioned, inconsistent. The Dodgers, only 1 game above 500. So your thoughts, Logan, most impressive team this week in the NL, and then the team you're a little bit disappointed with?
I'm going to start with my disappointing team, and that's the LA Dodgers.
Yes.
We look at this team. You talked about the Astros. I talked about the Astros not really losing a lot of guys, still being a very inconsistent team. And that's the Dodgers this year. They've lost, I believe, 4 in a row now, 3 or 4 in a row. But then before that 4-game skid, they won 16-4 against the Brewers.
Right.
And the Brewers are not a team to look away from. That is a very solid team that you have to talk about. But I think that the Dodgers are probably the most disappointing team in this NL for me. But one of the more impressive teams has been the Philadelphia Phillies. They've really gotten the bats going consistently. They won against Atlanta last night, 12-2. A very good performance. A lot of bats going in. Their pitching has been there as well. It hasn't been super inconsistent, despite the fact that they've been giving up runs. Their bats still make up for it. I think that this is a team that you have to look at as one of the more impressive teams in the NL this year. Yeah, and
the Philadelphia, they're 7-3 in their last 10 games, and as you mentioned, they destroyed Atlanta last night, 12-2. So Phillies and the Mets to me is going to be the battle of the NL East. So, Logan, that concludes our segment for this week of the Cleveland Sports Show. Thank you so much for joining me this week. Do you have any plans for the rest of the weekend? I know the weather might not be up to par.
No, it's cold, it's rainy, it's time to sit in the house.
Yeah, it's time to sit in the house, watch the Indians, watch the Cavs, and celebrate Mother's Day. Well, Logan, have a terrific rest of your weekend. Thank you so much for all of your terrific analysis and evaluations today. We will see you for our next episode in the near future.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Always a pleasure. And ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our latest edition of the Cleveland Sports Show. Thank you so much for joining me this week. Before I end this episode, I would just like to inform you where you can access more of my work. More where that came from, please, is probably what you're thinking. So I'll tell you where you can access more episodes of the Cleveland Sports Show. First, if you're on NordoniaHills.News, just head on to the Contributors tab. It's super easy. It's easier than doing 2 plus 2, I promise. If you just go to the Contributors tab on NordoniaHills.News, click on Find My Name. It's Darius Sethna, spelled DARAYUSSETHNA. Click on My Name, and then once you do that, you'll see my entire page of work on NordoniaHills.News. You'll be able to find previous episodes to the Cleveland Sports Show. You'll be able to find some broadcasts I did, if you keep scrolling down, of Nordonia boys basketball. I did the play-by-play for the team. We've been doing it for these last couple of years, so you'll be able to see this year's slate of games if you keep scrolling down. And also, most recently, I'm doing my senior internship at a radio station in Akron with Christopher Dominic at WNVU. And if you go to my tab in the contributors section, you'll actually see that I did a couple of sports breaks with Mr. Dominic, just to get some more on-air experience with the radio. So I broke it down into each day, May 4th, May 3rd, May 4th, and May 6th. So make sure you check those all out. The links to those sports breaks I have with Mr. Dominic are there for you to watch on YouTube, and you can access all of it on my contributors tab page on the NordoniaHills.News website. Also, you can find all of my work on Twitter. At Nordonia Sports is my Twitter handle, or you can just type in my name in the Twitter search bar, spelled DARAYUSSETHNA. Once you do that, you'll be able to see my entire Twitter page, all of my work, the podcast episodes, links to anything noteworthy on my page on NordoniaHills.News is all there on Twitter for you to access as well. So make sure you take a look at that. Additionally, you can access the Cleveland Sports Show on the Nordonia Hills News YouTube page. So if you're ever on YouTube and you're thinking about Cleveland sports to make your day a little bit better, well, you can make your day better by listening to me on the Cleveland Sports Show. Just go to the NordoniaHills.News YouTube page, and from there, you'll be able to access all of my episodes on the Cleveland Sports Show. My episodes are in the playlist of videos there on their YouTube page. And finally, I am so happy to say that you can take the Cleveland Sports Show on the go with you on Spotify. That's right. Take the Cleveland Sports Show with you no matter where you are in the world. If you need your Cleveland sports cravings, well, guess what? You can take it anywhere you want, in your car, on vacation, in your home, all on the convenient Spotify app. Just type in my name, spelled DARAYUSSETHNA, in the Spotify search bar. My podcast will come up. Just tap on my podcast, and you'll have all the episodes there listed for you as well. My sports breaks with Mr. Dominic are also uploaded on Spotify as well, under my podcast label. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes my latest episode of the Cleveland Sports Show. Wishing all the mothers out there a very happy Mother's Day. Thank you so much for all the sacrifices that all of you mothers do to help us kids be as successful as we possibly can be. So I hope all of you guys have a wonderful Mother's Day, all the families here in Nordonia Hills. We'll see you for another episode of the Cleveland Sports Show very soon. So excited to talk about the NBA now with the playoffs rolling around. So Logan and I will be back to discuss that. But in the meantime, ladies and gentlemen, have a terrific Mother's Day. Thank you so much for your time, and take care.